Souls-like, 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 Souls-like? What the fuck?
What the hell is this?
You ever notice how everything these days gets called Souls-like? Like you could make a cooking simulator where you have stamina bar and a dodge roll, and someone on Steam would be like, bro, it's basically Dark Souls but with bread and veggies? Seriously though, it feels like the term Souls-like is spreading faster than spoilers for a Marvel movie on Twitter. And here's the thing, nobody even agrees on what the heck it means. Is it the difficulty, the combat, the gloomy vibe, or is it just the fact you die a lot and feel bad about yourself? Today, I wanna dig in this whole Souls-like craze, why it slept on literally anything with dodge roll and why it's starting to lose all meaning. So, Dark Souls became a massive phenomenon, and for a good reason. It struck the perfect balance of brutal challenge, haunting atmosphere and cryptic storytelling, where half the lore is hidden in item descriptions or muttered by NPCs who might also try to kill you later. It is a game that rewarded persistence, curiosity, and willingness to embrace failure. Players loved it, critics loved it, and as usually is the case with anything that becomes suddenly widely successful, a lot of developers decided, hey, what if it did that too? So fast forward to now and we've got a mixed bag of games all claiming to be Souls-like. The problem is nobody really seems to agree on what that means. Not players, not journalists, not even developers half the time. It's like everyone has their own checklist for what makes something Souls-like. Is it a difficulty? Check. Does it have a dodge roll? Check. Does it make you question why you're playing this hard-ass game after a long day at work? Double check. But beyond the memes and Steam tags, this vague and inconsistent use of term has made it harder to pin down what actually defines a Souls-like genre. And in case you didn't understand, if you want to have a great drinking game, you might as well drink every time I say Souls-like in this video. And while it's all fun and games to slap this tag onto literally anything with stamina bar or punishing difficulty, it also creates confusion. Games that borrow only a tiny piece of Dark Souls get lumped into same category as games that really try to capture its essence. And the more this happens, the blurrier the definition gets. But here's the thing, if we're being honest, there's actually very little in Dark Souls that was completely original. It didn't invent challenging games. Classic titles like Ninja Gaiden or Castlevania were making players throw controllers long before From Software got into the game. Checkpoints like the bonfires in Dark Souls were already well-established mechanics. Dodge rolls, tons of action games had them. Even the gloomy atmosphere wasn't completely new, there were plenty of dark, violent and oppressive games before Dark Souls came along. So what made Dark Souls so special? Why did this game, which was essentially a Frankenstein monster of existing mechanics and ideas, feel like something we'd never seen before? That's the real question, isn't it? To figure out, we need to break down what Dark Souls brought to the table that made it more than just some of its parts. What's the secret sauce? What made it not just another hard game but genre-defining masterpiece? So, let's try to figure this out once and for all. After playing all the known games from Software and many so-called Souls-like games, I would say that true Souls-like should have all the 6 of the following things. First things first is at the core of every Souls-like game is the combat. It's deliberate, every swing of your sword, every roll, every block, it all matters. You're not just mashing buttons and hoping for the best, you're reading enemy patterns, timing your moves, and learning how to punish mistakes, yours and theirs. This is what separates games like Dark Souls from, say, Skyrim. In Skyrim you can just spam attacks and chuck potions mid-fighting, making for a much more relaxed experience. In Souls-like you do that and the game's delivering a one-shot boss attack for your troubles. Second thing I would call the you died philosophy. Death isn't just a setback in a Souls-like, it's a feature. The game expects you to fail and learn from it. It's like one really tough teacher you hated in school but later realized taught you the most. You die, you figure out what went wrong, and you come back smarter, or at least more cautious. But it's not just dying, it's the cost of dying. Souls-like game make you feel the sting. Lost your XP, your currency, your last shred of dignity, better go pick it up before some random enemy swipes it and does a victory vote. That risk-reward system is a big part of what makes something into a Souls-like. So, third on our list is the interconnectedness of the world. A true Souls-like isn't just about hard fights, it's about where those fights take place. The world itself is a character, full of shortcuts, hidden paths, and those aha moments where you realize the creepy castle you've been exploring loops back to the starting area. It's that feeling of discovery that makes this game so special. You're not just walking down linear corridors, you're piecing together this massive interconnected puzzle. And let's be real, nothing beats the dopamine rush of opening a shortcut and realizing you don't have to fight through that pack of angry skeletons again. Another thing is minimal handholding. Souls-like games don't hold your hand, they slap it away. No glowing quest markers, no NPC yelling, "follow me." You're dropped into this bleak, mysterious world and told, "good luck, buddy." The game trusts you to figure things out, and that trust makes every discovery feel earned and worth it. Compare that to the modern games where you have a glowing breadcrumb trail leading you to every objective. In Souls-like, you're lucky if the NPC even tell you their names, let alone what they're supposed to be doing. Half the time they're just cryptically muttering about some long-lost curse or vaguely threatening you. And let's not forget about the atmosphere. A Souls-like world is dark, oppressive, and full of existential dread. Even when you're outside in the sun, it feels like the world is about to collapse on you. From the haunting music to the twisted enemy designs, everything is crafted to make you feel small, vulnerable, and just uncomfortable. This is why games like Dark Souls or Bloodborne hit so hard. They nailed this oppressive tone. You're not just playing a game, you're surviving a world that wants you gone. And for the last one, which I also think is missing even in some of the From Software games, is the RPG DNA. From the very beginning, Dark Souls throws you into a system full of stats, classes, and equipment. You can decide whether you want to be a dexterous swordsman flipping through attacks like a ninja, or you prefer to be a tank who can shrug off dragon fire while looking like a walking fortress. Well, you can pump up the vitality and strength and get a shield with fire resistance so you can do just that. Or maybe you just want to throw fireballs and scream like a maniac while dodging like your life depends on it. The point is, you decide. One more thing that I want to mention is that Dark Souls and its predecessor Demon Souls appeared in correct time to get cult status for what they're doing. The games in that time were mostly following the modern game design philosophies, which made the games too accessible, easy, and simply without an edge that would be interesting for the players. So I think Dark Souls, on top of being a great mix of mechanics, was also a defining renaissance of harder games. And now that we established what was so special in Dark Souls, and hence what makes a Souls-like, let's discuss about what is not a Souls-like. So I think one of the biggest offenders in this everything is Souls-like trend is the Metroidvania genre. For some reason, a lot of players are quick to label these games as Souls-like if they're challenging, which to be fair, most of them were, long before Dark Souls even existed. And if they have a dark, gloomy atmosphere, then for sure this is a Souls-like. Two prime examples that come to mind are Hollow Knight and Blasphemous. Now, don't get me wrong, both of those games are phenomenal, and they do check off several boxes that I just discussed. In fact, Blasphemous even hits the sacred checkbox of having a dodge roll, the ultimate marker for Souls-like wannabes. But here's the thing, both of these games are missing critical ingredient, that RPG DNA. And let me explain. In Blasphemous, your progression is tied to unlocking new abilities, things like special moves or attacks. Sure, your stats might improve a little along the way, but it happens in fixed amounts at specific points in the game. It's linear progression system. You unlock moves to expand your arsenal, but there's little choice in how your character grows. Now, where else do you see progression based on unlocking abilities? Adventure games. While Dark Souls might share some DNA with classic adventure games, what sets it apart is its focus on builds. In Dark Souls, your progression isn't just about gaining new abilities or better equipment, it's about a choice. You're crafting your own experience through stat allocation, gear selection, and playstyle. Are you going to wield a colossal greatsword that can pancake enemies, or lightning-fast katana for precision strikes? Maybe you'll ditch melee entirely and throw fireballs or summon spectral swords. These choices fundamentally change how you play the game, how you tackle enemies, and even how you approach exploration. Blasphemous doesn't have that. While true you can slightly tweak your playstyle, it's ultimately a linear progression system dressed up in a dark, oppressive world. And that's fine, it works beautifully for what the game is, but it's not a Souls-like. Now, if we're talking about Hollow Knight, this game shares even fewer traits with Dark Souls, despite being equally challenging and having a similarly somber tone. Again, your progression is based on fixed upgrades and abilities you find throughout the game. You get double jump, a dash, and a few upgrades to your nail that allows you to access new areas. The customization comes from charms, small tweakable bonuses that can change how you play, but it's still miles away from depth of Souls-like RPG system. And this is the critical distinction. While Blasphemous and Hollow Knight are incredible games in their own right, they don't offer the same RPG depth and are different in game design for what truly defines Dark Souls. They might wear some of the same trappings, but under the hood they're doing something completely different. And honestly, that's okay. Not everything needs to be the Souls-like. There is another whole slice of games out there that adopts bits and pieces of Soul mechanics and slaps the tag on them, from big budget titles like Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order to smaller indie titles like Tunic, Bloodwest, and even hilariously quirky Another Crap's Treasure. But here's the thing. Most of these games are missing the key pillars that define what makes Dark Souls so distinct. For starters, a lot of these games completely lack the oppressive atmosphere or world design that makes a Souls game stand out. Dark Souls create a world that feels alive in its hostility. It's dangerous, interconnected, and layered with a sense of mystery. Every hallway, every castle tower, and every fog gate is dripping with tension and the fear of the unknown. In contrast, many of the Souls-likes feel more like they're borrowing the mechanics while ignoring the soul. Take the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Sure, it has challenging combat and enemies that can actually put up the fight, but the tone and design are completely different. You're not wandering through a bleak unforgiving world that tells its story through architecture and item descriptions. Instead, you're in a Star Wars playground, swinging lightsabers while cute droids cheer you on. It's fun, it's challenging, but it's not Souls-like. Or how about Tunic? It's a wonderful game, don't get me wrong, adorable art style, clever puzzles, and a sense of discovery that feels fresh. But calling it a Souls-like just because it's hard and doesn't spoon-feed you directions is a stretch. It's more of a love letter to Zelda than anything From Software has ever made. Then there's Bloodwest, an indie game with the haunting Old West vibe and some light survival mechanics. It's got bits and pieces from Souls formula, tough combat, resource management, but it still feels more like a first-person immersive sim with creepy western horror sprinkled in. And Another Crap's Treasure, it's literally marketed as a parody of Souls games. The whole point is to poke fun at the genre, not to authentically recreate it. But the real issue with most of these games is that they often miss one of the most critical aspects of Dark Souls: the game design that encourages player skill. In Dark Souls, your success isn't tied to random loot drops or how much you've grinded, it's about learning the game's systems, adapting to the challenges, and mastering the combat. The game doesn't hold your hand, but it doesn't also cheat you, at least most of the time. Every death feels like a lesson, and every victory feels like an achievement. Many of these so-called Souls-likes, however, lean too hard on one mechanic, whether it's stamina bar, difficult enemies, and lack of guidance, and ignore the holistic design philosophy. And then there are games that completely skip the RPG systems that make Dark Souls so engaging. Dark Souls doesn't just challenge you with enemies, it challenges you to build a character that suits your playstyle, whether it's Nimble Thief, a tanky knight, or a pyromancer who just really likes setting things on fire. Without that customization, you're not playing a Souls-like, you're playing something else entirely. Now, don't get me wrong, these games aren't bad, in fact many of them are fantastic in their own right. But just because a game borrows a dodge roll or throws some tough boss fights doesn't mean it earned the title of Souls-like. So, where does it leave us? Well, it's pretty clear that the term has become more of a marketing buzzword than a meaningful way to describe a game. Sure, a lot of games are inspired by Dark Souls, and who can blame them? It's a masterpiece that changed the way we think about difficulty, exploration, and storytelling. But the real essence of Souls game is more than just being hard. It's an oppressive atmosphere, its cryptic storytelling, its deep RPG systems, and the way it forces you to grow as a player, not just as a character. It's about mastering the game, overcoming impossible odds, and earning every single victory through blood, sweat, and a lot of swearing. And when we start slapping Souls-like onto every game that's even remotely challenging, we dilute what makes Dark Souls and its true successor so special. Not every tough game needs to be compared to Dark Souls. Let the Hollow Knight be an incredible Metroidvania, let the Tunic be an ode to Zelda, let Another Crap's Treasure be, well, a crap's adventure. And at the end of the day, Dark Souls is unique because it's more than just mechanics, it's a philosophy, it's a feeling. And maybe instead of trying to cram every challenging game into this box, we should let them be their own thing. After all, games can borrow from the best without needing to live in its shadow.